Glad you are tuning in. You're wanting to learn why you believe what you believe. Maybe that's why you're here. Maybe you want to better defend your faith and share your faith with others. So you're here for a good reason, whatever it is. Maybe you don't know Christ and you're looking into the claims yourself. Like, how do you know this is true? Well, today's a good starting point for that. So we're glad you're here with us. Since this is a Zoom meeting, I want it to be a little interactive at times. So what I'm going to tell you to do is I'll tell you when to mute your mic. So go ahead and practice that if you can. And I'll tell you when to unmute your mic when we can have discussion times. I'm going to try to keep this to an hour. This is a lot of pages of notes. But that's what I'm going to try to do each time. But my name is Jacob Haywood. I'm student pastor at Grace Baptist in Tullahoma, Tennessee, my hometown. I've previously been an apologetics teacher in Christian school for 3 years. I got some of my former students, some of my A+ students in here. They want to come back and hear some more of this. I am currently in PhD program for apologetics at the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. My focus is on the problem of evil. So here in 2 weeks, so next week is arguments for the existence of God. The week after that, we're going to look at the problem of evil and suffering. So that's one I'm really excited about. I'm excited. I love all of this material. And so I think you will too. But today, this is an intro to apologetics. You're going to get an introduction of what apologetics is. You're going to hear some tactics of how to practice apologetics. And you're going to see a little intro to how we know truth and how we can know truth. And so I'm going to pray for us and we'll get started. Y'all ready? You can shake your heads because I can't hear you. So you ready? All right, cool. Let's pray. God, thank you. Thank you for bringing us here today, that we can be connected, though we're apart. There's distance between us, but we're all here searching for truth today. This is incredible. You tell us, Lord, if we seek you, we'll find you. We seek you with all our hearts, and we're here saying, Lord, show us the truth. We'll ask just like Pilate, what is truth? And may you begin to show us today. So guide us by your Spirit. It's in Jesus' name. Amen. So apologetics. I'm going to try to share the screen here. I practiced the other day, so hopefully it'll work. Apologetics is, what is apologetics? So if you're going to take notes, I encourage you actually to take notes, whether you've printed them out, whether you have a blank piece of paper in front of you. I encourage you to take notes. What is apologetics? It comes from the Greek word apologia, which means defense. It means defense. We can see in 1 Peter 3:15, this word comes out. This is really the passage for apologetics. In your hearts, honor Christ the Lord as holy, always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you, yet do it with gentleness and respect. So in your hearts, honor Christ the Lord as holy, being prepared to make a apologia, to make a defense, to make an apologetic to anyone who asks you for the hope that is in you. I've tried to start, I am starting, and as the years go on, a ministry of my own called Reason for Hope. And that comes out of my problem of evil and suffering and hope kind of ministry, but also apologetics, because it all goes together. We're supposed to give a reason for the hope that we have. You're going to hear in a few weeks in a resurrection one, which you need to come to all of them. You're going to love the existence of God one. You're going to love the problem of evil one. You're going to love the resurrection one. Those are kind of the three ones that people like the most. But when we look at the resurrection, which we're celebrating this weekend, that's where our hope is in. Our hope is in, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, it's in a person and in an event. Our hope is in Jesus and the resurrection. And there are proofs to show that happened. But I'm getting ahead of myself, a few weeks ahead of myself. So there's different types of apologetics. There's evidential apologetics, which appeals to evidence to show the validity of Christianity. I encourage you. I'm going to show you a lot of resources. This is an introduction, and we can only hit the surface. So I encourage you to go deeper on your own. There's different study Bibles you can get. The Apologetics Study Bible is a really good one, and many other books. Evidence that Domains of Verdict, Cold Case Christianity, Reasonable Faith, The Case for Christ, you've probably heard of, with Lee Strobel. There's many others, but a lot of these, they look at evidence, historical, archaeological, scientific, many different evidences. It appeals to what's called natural theology. God has shown himself in creation that he exists, and many evidences, even for not just the existence of God, but the validity of Christianity. So it appeals to evidence to show the validity of Christianity in a nutshell. Presuppositional apologetics is another form of apologetics that it appeals to the notion that we all presuppose certain beliefs. We all come to the table already believing certain things. And so presuppositional apologetics is a school of Christian apologetics that believes the Christian faith is the only basis for rational thought. It presupposes that the Bible is divine revelation, and it attempts to expose flaws in other worldviews. Everyone has a philosophical presupposition which informs their worldview. This approach essentially seeks to show Christianity makes more sense of reality. And it comes from a more reformed soteriology, Calvinistic belief where you are totally depraved. And so the reason is totally depraved as well. And so a lot of Reformed people hold to presuppositional apologetics. One good book for this one is Faith and Reason by Ron Nash. I encourage you to look at that one. And it looks at the evidence as well. It's a great book. Classical apologetics, that's what I hold to, and that's what we're going to look at. Actually, I hold to all of them. I believe you meet the person where they are, and that's what we're going to learn to do today. Classical apologetics is a lot like evidential apologetics, where you look at evidence to show the validity of the existence of God and Christianity. And what's different from evidential apologetics and classical apologetics is it's this two-step approach. Classical apologetics shows you show the existence of God. Here's how we know God exists, and then you show the validity of Christianity. And so a book that if you were to start learning apologetics, this is the book that I would tell you to get. I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. It's by Norm Geisler and Frank Turek. I love the seamless argument throughout this. It's kind of a 12-step approach. Well, you can't see this as good with my screen. So I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist by Norm Geisler and Frank Turek. A lot of the material that I have is from this because I've developed most of my stuff from their homeschool curriculum, but there's a lot of other things in it. I'm going to bring back our screen. And so these are the three approaches, but what I think that all apologists should do is meet the person. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to lead someone to see the hope that is within you, and that's Jesus. You're trying to show someone Jesus is real, really loves you, really died for you, really rose from you. Christianity is real, and it is really our only hope. And so it is always for evangelism purposes, I believe. Now, it does something within you. But whenever we look at truth today, whenever we look at the existence of God next week and more things, it'll make more certain your faith. Which will strengthen you, which will make you feel all the more like this is really real. And it brings to life what we know to be true. So let's dig in. That's kind of what apologetics is. Now let's go straight to some tactics, okay? I want you to open your Bibles. I hope you brought your Bibles with you. But let's go to Matthew chapter 22. And again, please mute your mics if you haven't already. But Matthew 22, this comes out of my really my quiet time this week, looking at Holy Week. And I discovered Jesus had an apologetic, and this is incredible. I've never taught this, so this is new for you who've previously taken my classes and stuff. But this is Jesus two times here in Holy Week. We're going to see, let's go to Matthew 22. Let's read verses 41 through 46. Now, while the Pharisees were gathered together, Jesus asked them a question, saying, "What do you think about the Christ? Whose son is he?" They said to him, "The son of David." He said to them, "How is it then that David in the Spirit calls him Lord, saying, 'The Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I put your enemies under your feet'? If then David calls him Lord, how is he his son?" And no one was able to answer him a word, nor from that day did anyone dare to ask him any more questions. I love this. So this is what Jesus did. Jesus asked him a question, right? He said, "What do you think about the Christ?" The Pharisees were gathered. Jesus asked them a question. If you have your Bible, underline that. Jesus asked them a question. And his question was, "What do you think about the Christ?" So what he's doing right here, he's asking, he finds out information about their belief, really intending to listen, though he already knows about them. Then he asks, "Whose son is he?" He's points the question where he wants to take the conversation. And after they answered, he asks another question, refuting their point, and asks the final question to put the nail in the coffin. So he says, "If then David calls him Lord, how is he his son?" And no one was able to answer him a word, nor from that day did anyone dare to ask him any more questions. So here's what Jesus did. Now, Jesus knows all, but we should have the same tactics as this. Jesus asked a question. He sought the information and what they believed and what they thought. Then he asked pointed questions to draw them to the conclusion. We're going to see him do this again. Go to John chapter 18. John chapter 18, verses 28 through 38. I'm going to read the whole thing. So this is Jesus before Pilate. And I encourage you, well, I'll tell you about that in a minute. It says, "Then they led Jesus from the house of Caiaphas to the governor's headquarters. It was early morning. They themselves did not enter the governor's headquarters so that they would not be defiled, but could eat the Passover. So Pilate went outside to them and said, 'What accusation do you bring against this man?' They answered him, 'If this man were not doing evil, we would not have delivered him over to you.' Pilate said to them, 'Take him yourselves and judge him by your own law.' The Jews said to him, 'It is not lawful for us to put anyone to death.' This was to fulfill the word that Jesus had spoken to show by what kind of death he was going to die." Now, here we go with the, let me stop sharing. Here we go with the conversation of Jesus and Pilate. Verse 33, we're in John 18. "So Pilate entered his headquarters again and called Jesus and said to him, 'Are you the king of the Jews?' Jesus answered, 'Do you say this of your own accord, or did others say it to you about me?' Pilate answered, 'Am I a Jew? Your own nation and the chief priests had delivered you over to me. What have you done?' Jesus answered, 'My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would have been fighting that I might not be delivered over to the Jews. But my kingdom is not from the world.' Then Pilate said to him, 'So you are a king?' And Jesus answered, 'You say that I'm a king. For this purpose I was born. For this purpose I've come into the world.' And hear this, to bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice." Pilate said to him, this is incredible, "What is truth?" And that's really the question we're asking today in this session. But look at the response. Same verse. "After he had said this, he went back outside to the Jews and told them, 'I find no guilt in him.'" It's incredible. Later today, I'm going to do a reading online from, it's my favorite passage from any book. It's by Frederick Buechner. It's the book Telling the Truth, the Gospel as Tragedy, Comedy, and Fairy Tale. The portion I'm going to do a reading of, you're going to see kind of a modern day interpretation mixed with old time of Pilate and Jesus's interaction. So I encourage you to watch that later, and it kind of it brings it to life. But he asks the way, the truth, and the life. What is truth? And Jesus doesn't even have to say a thing, and he walks away saying, "This man is innocent." But do you see what Jesus did? I need to share the screen again. Are you king of the Jews? Are you king of the Jews? What does Jesus reply there? Jesus says, do you say this of your own accord, or did others say it to you about me? Jesus asks the question again. This is incredible. But the question makes Pilate answer it for himself. Pilate is asking Jesus the question, are you king of the Jews? And he's asking because these other people are saying it. But Jesus asks in response a question back to Pilate, and he makes Pilate answer the question for himself. And this is an incredible tactic. Pilate is asking the question, but Jesus makes him ask it to himself. Jesus makes pointed remarks, ending with his answer. For this purpose I have come into the world, to bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice. And Pilate, considering it for himself, replies, what is truth? Jesus didn't have to answer. Pilate already knew Jesus wasn't guilty. So I encourage you to watch this portion, this clip later of my reading for this Holy Week. So Pilate asked the question we all must consider, and what we're considering in this session. We're going to learn how we arrive at truth. Maybe you've never thought of this, how we arrive at truth. And if there's anything such as truth even. We're also going to see and practice some tactics like Jesus did. And so I just showed, actually I haven't showed you this, have I? Third book, this is the last book I'm going to show you today. But this is Tactics by Greg Koukl. If there's two books, if you're starting off in apologetics, if there's two books that you should read to start into apologetics, it's these two books right here. I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist and Tactics. Now in Tactics, now these are both practical, okay? He has one major tactic, and he calls it the Columbo tactic. Now, I am a millennial, and so I didn't know who Columbo was, and I had to look it up. But he would come on the scene, and I guess he'd have a cigar. I see Thor laughing right there. And so he'd come on the scene, and he would like ask a question about, he's a detective, okay? And he would ask a question. And so what, in a nutshell, the tactic that Greg Koukl talks about is just like Jesus. You make points by asking questions. You make points by asking questions. And so I'm starting off telling you a tactic because we're going to practice some of this before we even look at truth. And because I think apologetics is for evangelism purposes, I teach apologetics to be practiced, practical apologetics. I don't go into history type things. I don't. Now, we could if we go into longer lessons, but I like to teach practical apologetics because most of the time this is going to be done across the table from somebody, sipping coffee, or through text message, or talking to your brother or your cousin or something. And so that's how I like to teach this. So you make points by asking questions. And this is incredible because it's done just the same way Jesus did to Pilate. You ask questions in order to make them answer for themselves. What is better? What is more impactful? Me asking you a question and you arriving to that answer, or me just telling you that answer, saying, hey, God exists. Now, you hear points all the time from many different news sources. Like, nobody trusts words out of anybody's mouth, but what everybody trusts is what they believe, right? Whether it's true to reality or not. And so what this tactic does, you can make points, almost any point, by asking a question. And it makes them then answer it for themselves. Just like Jesus asked back to Pilate, well, who do you say I am? And Pilate had to ask for himself, well, is he king of the Jews? And so this is, in a nutshell, Greg Koukl's tactics. Make points by asking questions. We're going to practice it right now, okay? Are you ready to practice some of this? You can unmute your mics right now. You can unmute your mics. We're going to see that truth is not a subjective matter of faith, but an objective matter of fact. That's what we're going to see in this session. And an important step in discovering truth is identifying what is false. And so, I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist, they start off talking about self-defeating statements, okay? And we're going to see this. A self-defeating statement is one that fails to meet its own standard, okay? We're going to look at some of these, and here's what I want you to do. Maybe you didn't see that. A self-defeating statement is one that fails to meet its own standards. We're going to practice some of this right now. I want you to practice a tactic of refuting these self-defeating statements by asking a question. So again, you can unmute your mic now. And so I want you to think of how to answer these things by asking a question. I can't speak a word in English. How would you answer that with the question? Was that in English? Do you see what I did there? Now I could say, it would be just as true saying, you spoke that in English. But we're practicing asking questions, and they would have to then answer it for themselves. Was that in English? Well, yeah. So it's self-defeating. It fails to meet its own standard. It's saying I can't speak a word in English while speaking it in English. Now we're looking at these simple self-defeating statements. There are whole ideologies and philosophies that are self-defeating, and we're going to see that here in a little bit. And you can ask one question to make a whole thing crumble. Now, what I don't have enough faith to be an atheist calls this is the Roadrunner tactic. Okay, and I love it. The Roadrunner tactic. If you've ever seen Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote, Roadrunner, Wile E. Coyote's chasing Roadrunner, and he'll go off a cliff, and then all of a sudden there's no ground under him, and what happens? Like he floats there for a second, maybe he'll hold up a sign or something like uh-oh, and then all of a sudden, boo, he just falls. So this is like ripping the ground out from under, like the Roadrunner does in a sense, the Wile E. Coyote. So they call it the Roadrunner tactic. So I want you to practice. We're going to do several of these. I cannot think. How would you ask a question to answer that? I cannot think. Did that statement require thought? Did you think to say that? Come on, let's make this interactive. You cannot be certain of anything.
Are you certain of that?
Are you certain of that? Are you certain of that? Now, that is one that we're going to see today. Deep philosophy with that. You can't be certain of anything. You should be skeptical of everything. We're going to see how there is a certain truth and you can know truth. That's what today's about. We'll get back to that. I'm skeptical of everything. This is skepticism. How would you ask a question to answer this? I'm skeptical of everything. Are you skeptical of that? So they should doubt. You should be skeptical of your own skepticism if you are skeptical of everything, right? Okay. Yeah. There is no such thing as truth.
Is that true?
Is that true?
Is that true? I love that.
Is that truth?
Is that true? Yeah. And that's what we're seeing again today. There are a lot of people who believe there's no such thing as truth, but it's self-defeating. They make a truth statement. It is truthful that there is no absolute truth. That's what a lot of people live by. Next one, there is no way to know that anything is true. What would you ask?
How do you know that statement is true?
Yeah, how do you know that?
Do you know that's true? Well, by my own statement, I can't. All religions are true. Now this one's different. We'll actually skip that one. We'll come back to that one later, okay? I cannot express myself in words. How would you ask a question to refute that? I cannot express myself in words.
You just did.
Now that's a statement, yes, and that's just as true. We can answer people like that, or we could say,
can you explain that to me?
Or say, did you use words right then, or did you use words to say that? I came to the conclusion that I know everything intuitively. Now that one's a little more complex, but the fact that someone came to a conclusion means they didn't know it intuitively, so it's self-defeating in that way. You say, did you come to that conclusion intuitively? Anyways, I do not exist. That's a harder one.
How are you alive?
How are you talking to me? It's like,
yeah, aren't you here now?
That one's a little more complex. It's not as blatantly self-defeating, but it's a little fun practice to work out ways to ask questions in order to arrive at the conclusion you want to go to. Now, these are easier ways with self-defeating statements. You can do it with whole philosophies. And another, I forgot to tell you, another thing good about asking questions to make a point is it makes you listen. It makes you an empathetic listener. A lot of times we like to just give our points and say, this is what I believe. But if we ask questions, we have to actually listen. So you can go ahead and mute your mics again. We'll come back to some more interactive stuff. So go ahead and mute your mics, and we'll continue on here. Sharing. All right. We're going to get to now. I got way ahead of myself. Not ahead of myself, but we've just seen a little about how to refute some false claims. But what about truth? How can we know, first, if there is truth, and secondly, how to find what it is? There's a claim that all truth is relative. This is called relativism. What's true for you is true for you. What's true for me is true for me. For the question we'll get to about God and religion, it's like saying God is at the top of the mountain. The thing I said we're going to skip, it said all religions are true in the self-defeating statements. But saying that God's at the top of the mountain and all the different religions are just taking different paths up the mountain. I had a conversation with a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, who was talking about, who isn't a believer, but questions and really thinks about these things deeply. And she said that, I have a friend who is an atheist. I have a friend who is Jewish. I have a friend who is Muslim. I have a friend who is Jehovah's Witness, a friend who is Mormon. I have born again Christians, friends. She said, and they all are good people. And so this is why, in essence, what she was saying is they're all good people. They're all going up this path on their own, and they should all, there's no reason why any of them should go to hell, this kind of thing. Now, we're not getting into that stuff right now, but here's what I said to her. I said, now where I'm concerned is not in where they agree, but in where each of these disagrees. I said each of these people have a core belief that each of the others is wrong, but also they have core beliefs that determine how you live, and more importantly, eternity, core beliefs about eternity. And they actually contradict each other. So where I'm not concerned is where they agree, but where they disagree. Now, take atheism and theism. Now that's next week. We're looking at the existence of God. They contradict each other. You can't say God exists and God doesn't exist. You can't say both of those are true because they're contradictory. Now there's many other ways and from religions we can look at this, but where it matters is where they disagree, because a lot of them contradict in many points. They can't all be true when they claim that others are false. And so how can we know truth? So to help us evaluate truth, here are some truths about truth, okay? So you might want to take notes, some truths about truth. Again, this is from I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist, and I like how they put it. Truth is discovered, not invented. It exists independent of anyone's knowledge of it. So take for example, gravity existed prior to Newton's discovery of it, right? So truth is discovered, not invented. It exists independent of anyone's knowledge of it. Now, if we go too fast through these, I am going to try to cover a lot of ground because we're a little behind on time, unless y'all are okay with staying over an hour, but I do want to keep it at an hour. You can find these notes at graceintelahoma.com. Truth is transcultural. If something is true, it's true for all people, in all places, at all times. Some people will say truth, especially with morality, which we'll get to later a little bit, and not in this session. But they'll say it changes with different cultures. But truth is transcultural. 2 + 2 = 4 for everyone, everywhere, at every time. So truth transcends cultures. Truth is unchanging, even though our beliefs about truth change. When we began to believe the earth was round instead of flat, the truth about the earth didn't change, only our belief about the earth changed. The world was round, it wasn't flat, just our belief about it changed. You could say the Copernican revolution of how everything orbits, everything doesn't orbit around the earth, but it orbits around the sun. There was huge religious backlash to that. But now everybody believes, oh, we orbit around the sun. Now we didn't change. We always orbited around the sun, even though beliefs said different. Beliefs cannot change a fact, no matter how sincerely they are held. Someone can sincerely believe the world is flat, but that only makes the person sincerely mistaken. I've done this many times. People have seen me do it. I like to stand on something tall. If I have a ladder, I'll do a ladder. If I have a stool, I'll do a stool. And I'll stand on it. I say, I sincerely believe I can fly. I mean, with all my heart, I believe with every fiber of my being, I can fly. If I jump off of this, flap my arms as hard as I can, I will fly. Now, what happens when I jump? I fall. If I'm on a high thing, I splat, right? And because it doesn't matter, the sincerity of our beliefs doesn't matter as much. Ben Shapiro, the conservative commentator, says facts don't care about feelings. Maybe you've heard him say that. He says it a lot. Facts don't care about feelings. Beliefs cannot change a fact, no matter how sincerely they are held. More truth about truth. Truth is not affected by the attitude of the one proclaiming it. Now, our passage in 1 Peter 3:15 says, be ready to give a reason for the hope that is within you, yet do it with gentleness and respect. We're not to beat people over the head, but an arrogant person, an arrogant person does not make the truth he professes false. A humble person does not make the error he professes true. So truth is not affected by the attitude of the one professing it. Here's another one. All truths are absolute truths. This is our last truth about truth. There are even truths that appear relative that are really absolute. Take, for example, I, Jacob Haywood, feel warm right now. That appears relative because I'm talking about a feeling of myself. But it's actually true for everyone, everywhere, in all cultures that Jacob Haywood has the sensation of warmth right now. All truths are absolute truths. Let's go on. Why should we believe anything? So we've seen some truths about truth, how we can know truth a little bit. We saw how we can know falsehood a little, but why should we believe anything? Now you're in a lesson, you're in a class starting Intro to Apologetics to show we should believe Christianity is true. That's what we're going to arrive at the end of the last session. And really all through, we're looking at different points, core beliefs of Christianity, and showing evidence as to why it's true. Why should we believe anyone or anything at all? Everyone has faith in something. Everyone has faith in something. What you believe has the utmost importance. You could be building your entire life on a lie contrary to reality, and it matters for eternity. Relativists say it doesn't really matter what you believe as long as you believe something. But we don't live with this notion. We don't live with this notion. We live as if absolute truth exists, except in matters of morality and religion. Think if we actually lived this way. Relativism is ultimately unlivable. Okay, look at this point right here. It doesn't really matter what you believe as long as you believe something. Many people live this belief out. It doesn't matter what you believe as long as you believe something. But we don't live this way in any other area of our lives. Relativism in morality and truth is unlivable. Think if we lived this way. When it comes to religion and morality, we want to throw objective truth out the window. But in every other area of life. So take this, for example. It doesn't really matter what medicine you take as long as you believe it will help you. We don't live this way, right? You know, you could take something that could kill you. You could take something that makes you incredibly sick. In every area of your life, we don't live this way as if truth is relative. But some reason people want to do it with religion and with morality. beliefs don't trump facts in the real world. So why should people think they do when it comes to morality and religion? Why do people believe what they believe? So why should we believe anything at all? It matters. But why do people come to beliefs? I love this quote by Pascal. People almost invariably arrive at their beliefs not on the basis of proof, but on the basis of what they find attractive. And this is what the goal of the apologists, I think, is to help people see that Christianity is both true and it's desirable. That's called cultural apologetics. I didn't add that in earlier. I've just started studying that, and I want to go further. Did a review recently on a book called Cultural Apologetics by Gould. It's really good. But that's to show the desirability of Christianity as well. But we need to show this is actually real, but this is actually good, and we should want it. But here's why people believe things: sociological reasons. They believe things because of parents, friends, society, or their culture. There's many people who believe Christianity because of parents. Now, that's okay. We're told to teach our kids. Now, the object of your faith matters. Maybe you've asked the question before, if you were born in a Hindu country, would you be Hindu? Maybe if you never heard the gospel, you would because you believed your parents. Now, just because you believe it doesn't mean it's based off reality. But this, we have sociological reasons why people believe things. There's psychological reasons: comfort, peace of mind, meaning, purpose, identity. I told you the last book, just a second. What was the other one? I just got done reading this book, The Making of an Atheist by James Spiegel. It shows how immorality leads to unbelief. It's a really good, quick book. You see, it's not very big. But the whole thing shows how many, and even like primary atheists, and the ones who are most forthright about it, are for moral reasons. A lot of them. A lot of people deny the existence of God because they don't want God ruling over them. Even if they don't admit it. A whole lot of atheists. Not saying every atheist is immoral, but these blatant, hardcore atheists, a lot of them have very immoral lives, and the things they stand upon are to continue their immorality. I'm not going to go deeper into that. If you want, this was a really good book, but The Making of an Atheist, and it shows this is a psychological reason. People wouldn't believe in the existence of God is because they want to live how they want to live. A lot of people live that way, but there's many other reasons. There's positive reasons: psychological comfort, peace of mind, meaning, purpose, identity. Religious reasons: scripture, pastor, priest, guru, rabbi, imam, church. There's religious reasons people would believe, and there's philosophical reasons. So consistency, coherence, completeness. Now that's what we're looking at, is really these philosophical reasons. There's many different religions, and so you can't just say just believe it because your religion says it's true. Because if I was born in a Buddhist culture and my religion says this is the way reality is, should I just believe it because it's true? No, I shouldn't. I should believe it. I just believe it because I'm taught it. No, I should believe it because it's true. And so what we're looking at is consistency, coherence, completeness, philosophical reasons. The only way to test what is correct is to use sound reason and evidence. And this is what we're looking at: philosophical reasons. You can't just say, just believe it because you were taught it. We need to say, believe it because it's true. And if you're a Christian, you shouldn't fear because truth is on our side. I'm going to show you two different core beliefs that still hold this day. Come from David Hume, empiricism, skepticism. This is really quickly, this is not even brushing the surface. But what came out of his teachings is something called the principle of empirical verifiability. Empiricism is saying, is what you can see and touch and observe, okay? So propositions can only be meaningful if they're one of the two following. Those, if they're true by definition, and if they're empirically verifiable. So like 2 + 2 = 4, that's true by definition. Now, science, let's say scientism, I would hold that as a religion in a sense. Naturalism. Only things you can see and touch and observe are true. That's what they hold to. And so what Hume would say from his empiricism is that the only things we can know that are true is if it's true by definition, or if it can be seen and observed, and we can know it's true empirically. Okay, so this is David Hume. Kant, his agnosticism, there's no way to know anything about reality. You never know anything in itself. And he came, so you only know the thing after your mind senses it. So maybe you've heard of phenomena and noumena. And these are some things that came out of Kant's teaching. Now, the noumena is the reality. Now, how he gets to know that there is what is actually real, I don't know, because he says everything we perceive is filtered through our mind. So you see the bookshelf behind me. Like, I can't be certain that's there or that is actually how it is, because it's all filtered through my mind. So that's the phenomena. It's what I perceive to be reality. The noumena is, in a sense, what is reality, though we can't be certain that what we are observing, perceiving, is correlating to reality. So in a sense, that's come out of Kant's teaching. So how can the philosophies of Hume and Kant be refuted? So now we're going back, we're starting to put together some stuff we've learned, okay? Some of the tactics. So I want you to think about answering questions, thinking of self-defeating. These are whole philosophies. And I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. Norm Geisler, who's one of the greatest apologists of all time, many books on apologetics, but he talks about being in school and in college and having to write a paper on Hume and empiricism, the principle of empirical verifiability. And I'll tell you it after you try to refute this. I'll tell you how he stood up to give his presentation, basically made one statement, then sat down. But then he's like, how can you refute a whole philosophy with just a statement? But if it's a simple problem of which makes it wrong, it can give a simple answer to refute it. So think about this. Hume, I want you to think about this. Go ahead and unmute your mics for a second. Go ahead and unmute your mics. How can the philosophies of Hume and Kant be refuted? So let's do Hume's first. I want you to think about it for a second before you respond. So essentially, you can only know something is true by definition, or if it's empirically verifiable. Now, taking the tactic, not saying this is how that's not true. I want you to think how you can ask one simple question to refute that. You can only know something is true if it's by definition or verifiable. How would you answer that by question?
How do you know that definition is true? How do you know it's verifiable? What source did it come from? Is it a reliable source? I don't know if they can hear me.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I'd like to know how he empirically verifies that you can only know something is true by empirical verification.
Yeah, you can't observe that statement's true, right? Is that statement true by definition? No. So this is the one that Norm Geisler tells a story that he got up in class to give a presentation on this, and he says Hume's principle of empirical verifiability says that something is meaningful only if it is by definition or empirically. This is neither true by definition or empirically, therefore it is not meaningful. And he sat down. So that's I like that story. So the next one, Kant. You cannot know anything for sure. This is where skepticism comes out. You cannot know the real world. How would you refute? You cannot know anything for sure. This is a very prominent ideology in the world. How would you refute this?
I mean, do you know that for sure?
Do you know that for sure? That's a very certain statement, right? That says you can't be certain. Yeah, so both of these are contradictory.
Can you say, are you sure about that?
Are you sure about that? I love that question and response. Yeah. You cannot know anything for sure. Many people will believe that. Just say, are you sure about that? Here's a little tactic I love to do. I think it's Greg Kokel who talks about a lot of apologetics is putting an acorn in a shoe, like making you uncomfortable, like making someone uncomfortable in their unbelief or wrong belief. But if I'm leaving the conversation and knowing I'm going to come back to it, I like to say, I just want you to think, what if you're wrong? What if you're wrong? I like to leave just a simple question with that. That makes them think about their own beliefs as we're gone, and then try to come back to it. We're going to continue on. So if you want to, actually, please go ahead and mute your mics. See, we got 10 minutes. I think we can do this. I'm trying to get back in my notes here. All right. So Hume and Kant are proven wrong. So what? That doesn't mean we have evidence for the existence of God. The Roadrunner tactic, again, that's what this book calls refuting self-defeating statements. It can only reveal that a proposition is false. It doesn't provide positive evidence that any particular claim is true. So how is truth known? It begins with self-evident laws of logic. So we're going to look at logic and deduction here. Self-evident laws of logic called first principles. In a nutshell, we're not going into logic right now. You got the law of identity, the law of non-contradiction, the law of excluded middle. Essentially, law of identity says a thing is or isn't, like A is A, okay? The law of non-contradiction says A cannot equal not A. You cannot have contradictory things. A cannot equal not A. You cannot have God exists and God does not exist, cannot both be true. The law of excluded middle, there's no middle ground. It's either A or not A. Now these are first principles, laws of logic, because they're understood, and by it we understand a lot of the world. And we can't know truth or have understanding apart from this in a lot of ways. Although we use these first principles to help us discover truth, they alone can't tell us whether or not a particular proposition is true. Now, this is fun. Here's some logic. This is deduction, okay? And we're doing this because it's setting up our next session. How we're going to look at the existence of God is by these standards, okay? So we need to look at truth and how we arrive at truth and how we can know it's true in order to see how the arguments for the existence of God work. So take this logical statement. This is a logical statement. All men are mortal. Spencer is a man, therefore Spencer is mortal. It flows logically. All men are mortal. Spencer is a man, therefore Spencer is mortal. I'm going to show you another logical statement. All men are four-legged reptiles. Now, the women might say amen for that. But all men are four-legged reptiles. Zachary is a man. Therefore, Zachary is a four-legged reptile. If you want to respond to me, you can unmute. Not everybody has to unmute your mic. But is this a logical statement? What would you say? You can either shake your head. I can't see everybody right now, but
it's logical.
It's logical. But here's the next question. Is this true?
I hope not.
Right. So it's a logical statement. So it doesn't show us that it's true, though. The conclusion is false. Here we go, because a premise is false. So logic only gets us so far, okay? To show something is not false. An argument can be logically sound, but still false, because the premises of the argument do not correspond to reality, okay? And so this is important because this is how we're going to look at the existence of God, because we're going to show this is how we arrive at truth. These are true premises. We're going to lay them out. Do they flow logically? Yes. Okay. So we look at the premises, and if the premises prove to be true and we arrive at the conclusion God exists, we've arrived at truth. God really exists. So logic only gets us so far. Logic can tell us an argument is false, but it cannot tell us by itself which premises are true. So here's deduction and induction. We're almost done. And so I can't believe we've actually made it in time, and we'll have question and answer time. So deduction, the process of lining up premises in an argument, arriving at a valid conclusion. So just like, what was it? All men are mortal. Spencer's a man, therefore Spencer is mortal. So you line up these premises and you arrive at a conclusion. And we use induction. Induction is the method of drawing general conclusions from observations, okay? We use both of these, the deduction and induction, to arrive at truth. This is how we arrive at truth. So we look at reality, we look at different observations about what we see, and we make conclusions based off those. So if something is true logically, it's deduction. Then we look at the premises to see, are the statements within those true? And we do that by induction. The question must be asked then. If you don't know something 100%, can you still be certain that it's true? You can unmute your mic if you want to answer. What do you think? If you don't know something 100%, can you still be certain that it's true? What do you think?
Well, it can be true to you.
True to you?
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't
it can be experiential, like induction. It can be experiential.
Nothing. I'm just answering question.
So, but what if it's true for you, it doesn't mean it's necessarily true, though, right?
Yeah.
Can I give an example?
Sure.
You get on an airplane, you understand 100% how that airplane works, but you still trust it to be airworthy when you get on it.
Right.
So you don't have to know everything about that airplane. You don't have to know Newton's principles or thermodynamics or structure or anything about that airplane other than that airplane is allowed people to get on because someone is certified it's safe to get on.
Right. You don't
So
have to be you don't have to be an aerospace engineer, right, to
correct.
believe you'll stay in the sky. I mean, you've seen many of them stay in the sky, so there's evidence there that you use from induction. You've seen many of them stay in the sky. You know, pilots study. You know, these engineers have worked on it, so there is evidence that it would keep you up. But still, a lot of people that's why they shake in a plane, because you're like, I don't know if it's going to hold me. A lot of people are that way with their beliefs as well, you know. So I'll say, you can go ahead and mute. We'll have some more discussion here in a second. If you don't know something is 100%, can you still be certain it's true? Yes, beyond a reasonable doubt. That's what they get to in this book. And often you look at courts. Courts try to arrive at certainty to give convictions, to show innocence or guilt. But it's always beyond a reasonable doubt. They look at evidence, and this is what we do. We're weighing evidence. And so we can come to conclusions. You can't be, listen to this, you can't be 100% certain that all men are mortal, can you? You can't, because you've never witnessed all men die. Every man that's ever lived, you haven't witnessed die. So you can't even be 100% certain of a certain statement like that. But induction informs your certainty. Every person you've known has died. So beyond a reasonable doubt, you can still be certain of things, even though you can't know 100%. And this is how we arrive at truth all the time, of what we believe. So what does this have to do with knowing the truth of God and Christianity? Observation and induction help us investigate the ultimate religious question: does God exist? And so that's what we're going to get into in the next session of the arguments for the existence of God. There are observational effects that give evidence to the existence of God beyond. Are there observational effects that give evidence to the existence of God beyond a reasonable doubt? Yes, we wouldn't be here doing these lessons if we didn't hold this. And we're going to show proofs of these. The question of truth in religion and morality matters to the highest degree in our lives and in the world. I love this quote by Tozer. What comes into our minds when we think about God is the most important thing about us. Here's a little kind of concluding statement from our book. I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. Regardless of what the real truth is concerning religion and morality, our lives are greatly affected by it today and perhaps even for eternity. Those who cavalierly say, so what? Who cares about truth and morality and religion? Are ignoring reality and are blindly skating on thin ice. I love this. This is a good concluding. We owe it to ourselves and to others to find the real truth and then act on it. So by the end of this class, I encourage you, please stick with us. Next week is going to be highly scientific and philosophical, and stick with us past that, the problem of evil and suffering. And then the week after that, arguments for the resurrection. And then the final week will show the validity of Christianity through the scriptures, New Testament, how we can know it. That's true. But by the end of this class, we'll undoubtedly arrive at the conclusion that Jesus has already told us. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And that's where our hope lies. And that's why we're here. So this is our meeting of truth. We did an introduction. We did some tactics, Columbo tactic. We did just an intro to how you can know truth. And we did it all in an hour. Look, it's 2:00. How about that? So if you want to ask a question, I'll stay on however long you want me to. But let's try to keep them to this topic. If you have them, even if it's contradictory, if you want to argue, go for it. But again, this every week until we're done with this, it'll be 1:00 on Mondays, and I'll try to do the same thing where I have slides for you, and I'll have a manuscript for you. If you want to print it out or put it on another device as you follow along, or if you just want to read over it later. And so if you have a question about truth or how we arrive at truth and meaning and that kind of stuff, unmute your mic and ask. I'll stay on as long as people want. Okay, so thank you for coming to our first Intro to Apologetics class. God bless you. So ask away.
Can you please tell me the website name where I can download the notes?
Yes.
Bye.
I was writing it, but then I ran out of room. Okay, I'm gonna write it again. So Grace in Telahoma.com/online-apologetics. I'll hold it up here. Can you read that? I don't know.
I didn't see it. Grace in Telahoma.
GraceInTelahoma.com/online-apologetics.
I just typed it into the chat if somebody wants to get it over there.
Great. Thank you, Thor.
Thank you.
Any other questions about truth or how we arrive at meaning or different books or
Could you repeat the Tozer comment that you did the last part?
The Tozer quote? What comes into our minds when we think about God is the most important thing about us. So what comes into our minds, what comes into our minds when we think about God is the most important thing about us.
Oh, that's so good. Thank you.
You're welcome. So if you need anything recapped or gone over or question.
Could you send a list or post a list somewhere of the books you recommended through this session?
Sure, I will. Let's see. Yes, I'll do it somehow.
Sorry.
Yes. No, I'm trying to think of, because there was a couple different threads on Facebook. I was gonna say I'll comment it in the comment section. I'll do that, and there's like 2 or 3 threads on Facebook. I'll put it in each one of those in the comment section. How about that?
Okay. And has this session been recorded? Steve is working, so I know he would love to be part of this, but I don't.
Yes.
You know.
It is recording even now.
Okay.
And so I'm gonna upload that to that same website here later today, and probably a few
to the
hours.
Grace in Tullahoma. Okay, awesome. Perfect. I so appreciate you doing this. This is amazing. I love it.
Well, good. Thank you. Anybody else question?
Can you repeat that definition for inductive reasoning? I mean, that definition.
Yes. Delaney was one of my former students, A+ student. Induction. I can share the screen.
No, I was trying to keep up with all my notes.
So Abby and Delaney, did y'all did bring back good memories, bad memories?
Yeah, we were actually talking about it, how much we miss this class.
Yeah. And it just reminded me of all the high school days, you know.
You got that definition, Delaney?
Almost.
It's basically observation. And yeah.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. In a nutshell.
He's got, on the site, he has the lesson manuscript, and then he's got the slide. So I'm not using a phone. I'm using a laptop with a second screen. So I've had all this stuff up, and that's why I'm standing up. Glad this is over in an hour because I'm about to sit down. But hey, it's been good. Thank you, Jake.
Thank you for coming.
I don't know how to talk.
You just talked.
Good. I tried it out.
I should have asked a question. I should say, did you just talk? Right? That would have. Bobby, It's good to see you. How are you?
I'm fine.
Do you have a question?
No, I have just absorbed all of this. It is just so good, Jacob.
Good.
Very good. I mean, it has been. It's very good.
Good.
So thankful I could do this.
I'm sorry, I missed that. Something froze up a little right there. What'd you say, Bobby?
I said I'm so thankful that I was able to finally get into one of your apologetics classes.
Good.
Yeah.
I'm glad we're stuck in our homes, able to do this. Even though that sounds.
Oh, it's such a great time. Times of refreshing.
Good.
Yes.
Yes, time to stay at home and spend time with God.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? Any questions from the lesson or about any of the material, or even questioning some of the things that were said?
So Jacob,
everybody but George can talk. Y'all don't know George. He's a friend of mine from school. Good to see you or hear you.
Ouch, dude.
Do what?
Ouch.
You're smarter than me. That's why you can't many people are smarter than me, but George is in Christianity and the Arts PhD program, and he's a good friend and brilliant thinker and creative guy. But anyways, any questions?
So Jacob, what does that induction method, how does that describe Bible study then? I know some Bible studies are described in that way.
That's inductive Bible study.
Mhm.
I've never actually done inductive Bible study of where you get like different colors, like pens and stuff. And
Well, I was just thinking about the definition of drawing general conclusions from specific observations. How would that relate to Bible study then? I guess just observing the text and drawing.
Thor, you're this is Thor Cardin. He's an apologist, and he does events and stuff. Have you done inductive Bible study?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah. George?
Yeah, so an inductive Bible study is where you would take all of the uses of a certain term in the Bible and try to come up with what the meaning of that term is by comparing the multiple uses. Let's say perhaps let's take a word righteousness, right? It's a good biblical term, and it has a pretty broad range. It has in the Bible, just in the Greek, then it could be used as a right act legally. It could be a right act morally. It could be a just act, like we hear a lot of times now about justice being legal justice versus social justice, and all those terms can kind of be bound up in the term that the Bible uses for righteousness. So what you would do for an inductive Bible study is you would take that term and find everywhere that it's used, and then see, oh, well, based on the context in each of those, it's leaning that the Bible leans toward toward a social justice aspect or toward a legal justice aspect. And so you're doing essentially the same thing, taking the specific instances of it and trying to come up with a general principle that can be applied broadly.
It sounds a lot like what lexicographer, I can't pronounce it, but people that figure out what words mean by looking at how they're used in context. I didn't know I was doing an inductive Bible study when I did that sort of stuff, but I know I did a study on fear one time like that. It's used three totally, completely distinct different ways in the Bible. It doesn't always mean the same thing.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Yeah, so I don't know how the word correlates there, but
that's good. Those are good thoughts. I appreciate that.
Thank you, George.
Yeah, thank you, George.
Yeah.
Anybody else questions that
George, by the way,
that George can answer? Any questions? Good. All right. Not my favorite part, but I was so thrilled. I was in my quiet time this week and reading just different aspects of the Passion Week, and seeing that Jesus had an apologetic, and how he practiced that, asking people questions to make his point. I just was like so excited about that. I've never seen that before, and I thought it was incredible. So that's been thrilling for me this week, discovering something kind of new to me. It's always fun, but especially being Holy Week, made it extra special. So, and talking about truth today, and part of that was Jesus's talk about truth. But really, I do encourage you to read Telling the Truth, or at least listen to my reading of it. I'm just going to do a reading of that excerpt today. George, have you read Buechner? I think I've talked to you about him, haven't I, George?
Yes, I have, and actually I was trying to get my camera to work because I'm holding up the book in front of my camera. So
okay. Hey, Delaney's got it. Yeah.
I've been waiting on the reading here.
Okay. Yeah, it's the first time. It's my favorite part of any book I've ever read, is the part with Jesus and Pilate in Telling the Truth by Buechner. And he mixes like the times of Jesus and times of now. You got the tactics that are awesome. I love that book. But anyways, like Pilate is smoking cigarettes. He had just quit smoking the night before, and like all this stuff, like he mixes modern day with times back then, and it's just incredible. And then it gets to the point where he's talking with Jesus, and then finally he asks, what is truth? And Jesus is just silence. And it's the first time I've ever read something and been like, I have never read anything like this before. I'm going to do
book Telling the Truth.
Telling the Truth. I'm going to do a reading of it and post it today, just because it's Holy Week and all of that. Yeah. But so y'all good? No final words. All right. Thank you for joining.
I had a few technical difficulties with my laptop earlier. It decided to do an automatic update.
Oh.
So I lost a few minutes early on, but luckily I was already mostly logged in on my iPad. So I got back in, so I will review this. I will look at this again once the recording is updated.
Good.
Yeah.
Introductory and looking at truth is important in this. This session isn't most of the people's favorite. Existence of God and resurrection a lot of times are people's favorite. I'm excited about teaching the problem of evil to y'all. But this is important because you have to meet people where they are, and before you even have a belief in the existence of God, you got to cover if you can know truth and how you arrive at truth, because a lot of people don't believe you can know truth even, or that truth is relative. So if you come across someone like that, and we haven't covered it in these sessions, then you wouldn't be equipped. So at least you can spot some of that now and try to ask some questions.
Yeah, I have come across that. I have a good friend who is a very strict atheist, and it's been very difficult for me to try to talk to him. So I'm really anxious to learn how to do that.
Yeah. Well, if you have any questions, y'all know where to find me. You can message me, and I'll do my best to answer, or at least I know where to point people with books. That's kind of, Delaney just held up a book. That's kind of thing I do, is give people books, because these people are smarter than me. And so, So, and Becky, you were the one who asked for me to post the books earlier, right?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah, totally. So,
okay.
Yeah. Thank y'all for joining us. I hope you have a good Holy Week and good celebration of the death and resurrection of Jesus. That's where our hope is. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
God bless. Bye.
God bless you. Thank you.